Hi, very good morning. Sunday. It's Jim from Mavstar. I know it's been a while, guys. I have been very busy with other things. But I wanted to just bring a few things to your attention. And we're going to be talking about this a bit later on, the Hong Kong dollar. And there's a good reason why we're going to talk about it. But this video is about data analytics and, predicting future outcomes. And the reason why I say that is because, for the last 15 years now, I've made some predictions, and quite a few of those have come to fruition. They've been accurate predictions. I'll give you a couple of examples. Cloud seeding, talking about that 12 years ago, and I was called a conspiracy theorist for that. Now, even the British government come out and said, yeah, we're going to spend £800 million in 2025 trying to block out the sun's sunlight so we can reduce solar radiation and try and cool the earth down. I think it's just an excuse. Nobody knows the quantity of material that they're going to spray into the atmosphere, and because of that, it's very easy to put that money in their own pockets, but it will be taxpayers' money that goes in their pockets. So that it's just an excuse to rip people off. Trying to think of another one. I've predicted solar X-ray flares 48 hours before they've happened. That's when I used to study solar activity regularly. I've been talking about the pole shift, which is still migrating at an average rate of 5.1 miles per month or thereabouts. It has stopped a few times in the last few years. It has sped up, but still progressing towards Russia, and we know why that is. And what I wanted to say to you guys is, if you can get some data on something, that you can predict the future from that data. And what I notice right now, and you probably notice it as well, is that there's a cost of living crisis globally, but at the same time there's also a push from global governments to push digital IDs. And we all know what will happen when digital IDs come in. You'll be limited on carbon. So if you've had your carbon limit for the month, then you're going to be highly restricted on what you can purchase or where you can go or what you can do. And if you go against the grain of the government's ambitions and ideas and their future plans, then they can switch off your digital ID very quickly and restrict you and criminalise you. We know that this is going to happen, because we've seen it happen in China, we've seen it happen in Vietnam and other countries around the world already. And it's no coincidence, guys, that there is a cost of living crisis globally, and there is also a digital ID planned for everybody. Austria, lots of other European countries are pushing forward with this idea. Now, this is organised, without a doubt. It's organised. The cost of living pressures have been imposed on us all globally so that they can push the digital IDs on us. And when they do come, because of the pain of the cost of living crisis, we're going to go for it. Nobody's going to say no to these governments. This is global governments, or global one-world government, playing out right now in real time. So, it's easy to make predictions if you've got the right data. Now we're looking at the Hong Kong dollar, and I've chose the period of time of 10 years because it pulls out a very simple trend. Now, look at this when I put the cursor bar on this top of the peak. Do you think that there's any coincidence that it never goes above that line? Just look at that, right? So I would call that the sell line, yeah? Because you couldn't make a mistake from this point. If you brought there, it never goes above the line. It hasn't for the last, since 2018 at least. This thing happens regularly, 2019, 2020, 2022, 2023, 2024, and it's happened in 2025 as well. But if we draw the cursor bar down to the very bottom, we can see the exact same things happening. Look, it doesn't go below that line. So I would call that line the buy line. And anything in between the sell line and the buy line, I wouldn't even bother with. But you could almost say that that is guaranteed to be successful. If you brought at the bottom and just waited and sold at the very top, you would win. I have never seen a currency chart like this, and that's why I'm bringing it to your attention. Because look, again, it never goes above that line. Now, anyone with common sense would look at that and say, something very strange is going on here. It's either being capped deliberately, and if it is, then it can be very easily exploited. And it's also been, capped at the very bottom. Look, you couldn't even make this up, guys. It's unbelievable. Something very strange about this currency that is very predictable, in my view. Absolutely very predictable. And I've never seen anything like it. That's why I want to bring this to your attention. Okay, so we can make predictions, yeah? If I brought here today, if I invested £2 million, when that line goes to the bottom, I wouldn't invest in anything in between those two lines. But if it's that bottom line where the cursor is right now, I would buy or invest £2 million right there, because I know that according to the historic pattern of this chart, it never goes below that line. And I would just wait for it to get anywhere close to that top line and sell. And you would not lose, because the historic information shows that to be the case. Guys, I have never seen anything like this ever in my life. It's obviously a manipulated line. Somebody is controlling it. It's got to be the Hong Kong government that's controlling it. But through controlling it, they've left it open to exploitation. Trust me, I wouldn't invest anything below the top line and the very bottom line. I would only invest at the very top and at the very bottom. And this occurs nearly every year. An opportunity. I've never seen anything like it. That's why I'm bringing it to your attention now. It's predictable. That's what I'm saying. If we look at another chart that's predictable, let me get another chart up to show you what I'm talking about. Yeah. So another chart. Okay, it's not currencies chart. It's actually natural events. This is the interglacial and glacial chart over 400,000 years or 500,000 years. Here's the thing I'm trying to make out. You see these purple lines here, right, are the peaks. They're all spaced out at the same place, and these green ones on the bottom also likewise. So each one of these peaks, in the time in between each one is around about 100,000 years. This is the Milankovitch cycle, guys. But what I'm saying is, it's a regular pattern, and we can predict, let's say, where the cursor is right now. We can predict what's going to happen in another 100,000 years. We're going to get an interglacial, because all these peaks above the black line are interglacials, a time and a period of when the Earth goes through a warmer climate. And then at the bottom, the grey, when it goes past that grey line, it's a period of time where the Earth goes into glacial, which is much cold, and most of the northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere regains glaciers. But my point is, it's predictable. We know that it'll be 100,000 years in between each gap, and we're here right now, so we know that we're coming towards the end of a glacial period, and it will go back into we're coming to the end of the interglacial period, and we're going to be going back into a glacial period. It will get colder. So I'm predicting the future based on the data previous to it. We know we've got 100,000 year cycles. We know that at the peak of those cycles of the temperature, it goes into an interglacial, and then when it dips below the black line, we start to merge back into a glacial period. It's predictable, just like the Hong Kong dollar is predictable. And yes, it's pegged to the United States dollar as well, if you look into it. So if you have the data, you can make the predictions. Yeah. Now, getting back to every country in the world being in a financial crisis. Yeah. There's no mistake about that. It's never been done before in history. The globe has never gone through a global crisis like it has. And at the same time, we have never seen global governments trying to introduce the digital card or the digital ID. They're saying it's for, good purposes, but trust me, there is evil in that. It is all about control. It's a threat that if you don't behave, you'll have your rights taken away. You won't be able to travel. You'll be restricted to how much you can buy with your own money. Just like, we are already in one way. You go to the bank and you try and draw out £2,000. They start asking questions of what you're going to do with that money. Well, shouldn't be none of their business. We've paid tax on it. We earned it. It's our money. We can do what we want. They don't want us using cash because they can't trace it. Because with cash, let's say we live in a digital society and there is still cash, right? Those that don't have ID cards can still be paid by cash. And that's what the government don't want, amongst a lot of other things. It's a control mechanism, but it's been rolled out globally. So my conclusion is to this: yes, shouldn't come to a surprise to anybody that there is a stealth government running countries around the world. Some would call that the elite global rich, that are lobbying governments in order to get control of them. I can give you a good example. Israel's a good example of lobbying America to the point where they control, every aspect of government. The Senates, the House of Representatives, even the President's office. There is no stop to what is being lobbied, and they chuck money at people that is in favour of Israel. And if you are in disfavour, they will chuck money at your opponents and have you removed basically from your job as a senator or something like that. We've seen this happen. We've heard senators come out and explain how this works. So it's not conspiratorial, it's fact. We are returning back into a glacial period. You can see it from yourselves from this chart. It's predictable. Even a child could work it out. If I told him to continue drawing the same pattern, he would continue drawing the same pattern. So you're looking at the future. You know what's coming next, right? It isn't global warming, and it certainly isn't caused by CO2. That's just a method of control. It's a method of tax, and it is very lucrative for them. The United Nations gets 1 trillion a year for carbon. And, look at this as well. This is ridiculous. We are a very small island, 200 miles from side to side and from top to bottom, less than 700 miles. It's a small island. And yet the burden that we're placed on, trying to drive down CO2 at the taxpayer's expense is astronomical. It would not make no difference if we was carbon neutral today. Our impact on this planet would be negligible. Absolutely negligible. And it shouldn't make any difference anyhow, because global man's emissions of CO2 is negligible in any case compared to natural outgassing of CO2 from land and oceans. I'm very concerned as a scientist, that, if I talk out about this, I get punished. I've been already punished. You can just look at the views on recent videos over the last 8 months. They're using the algorithms now, and it's clear to me, in a very offensive way. Like people like me that talk about such things, they will use the algorithms to, when people search on certain topics that I talk about, you won't see me for 2 weeks, my video for 2 weeks afterwards, unless you subscribe to me. And if you subscribe to me, they'll unsubscribe you eventually, and they won't notify you of the video, so the view count drops right off. The less views we get, obviously the less opportunities we get of raising some funds for the observatory and some of the other stuff that we talk about. So they go after the money as well, in the same way. And this is looking like a fascist state. Back in the 1930s, the Nazis, the fascist Nazis, were burning literature, books, anything that people could read that the government didn't like at the time, or the Nazis didn't like at the time. It had to be burned. Today, the books are digital, and it's called online, the internet, and they are burning accounts in the same manner as what the Nazis was. They say we've got democracy, and freedom of speech should be at the heart of any democracy, yet they are targeting people through talking about their ideas and sharing their opinions. And there's a good reason for this. Why are they delaying people now by 2 weeks on YouTube? Why is the algorithms attacking people that are controversially speaking about certain subjects that goes against the grain of what the governments around the world talk about and want to push their agenda? And if you talk against that agenda, you get put back 2 weeks by the algorithms, or targeted in another way. They have got quite a toolkit now to deal with people that talk about these subjects. And the reason is because when people start to get angry and share ideas, it wakes up the anger in another person, and therefore there is a chain reaction, and it spreads very quickly on the internet and on social media. And that's why the government are controlling it, because they're at a point now where they are pushing the boat too far. People have had way too much of enough, and they're angry, and what they're trying to do is restrict the flame from hitting the fuel. That's all they're doing, because they know what they're doing right now is offensive. I wanted to share a few ideas with you guys, because if you understand data analytics, and how to read charts, you can predict the future if you spot the pattern, and you will get it accurately right. Whether it's anything, it doesn't matter what it is. We've looked at currencies, we've looked at interglacials. It's the same. If you pull out the trend, you can predict what's going to happen next, and you can apply that to anything. That's the point of this video. I'm just saying, if you look at something, there's a pattern, like the pattern of the world going through an economic crisis right now. Everybody going through the cost of living crisis. It's by no means a coincidence. It's a fact. It's by design. That's the pattern that's extracted out of it. So that they're going to continue doing this. If you see countries, forcing digital IDs on other people, that is not a conspiracy. It's a fact, and it's going to continue. And we've extracted the pattern out of what's going on. This is happening globally. It's going to happen to us at some point, wherever we are. They're talking about it in the British government right now, as well as all over Europe. They've already pulled it off in China. They're doing it in Vietnam and other Asian countries. It's coming, whether we like it or not. And if we continue to just allow it to happen, then we are going to be forced and have no options in the future other than to obey our masters. That's the bottom line. There's a link down there if you want to support what we do here at the Observatory. It's not just talking about, the pole shift. It's not just talking about climate matters. It is generally science-based. But, science can also spill over into e-commerce, global, and also global economics and politics. I'll give you, for instance, of how politics interfere with climate. Well, they manipulate charts like, the end of this chart there, we've got the ice hockey stick, which is a load of bullshit. The governments haven't come out and told you guys that CO2 is actually reducing. Did you know that? Albeit by 10 or 15 parts per million, it is reducing. And so it should do. If we return back into a glacial period, look at the CO2 chart, look at the temp chart. When the temperature drops, CO2 drops. Ta-da! At the moment, it may only be 10 or 15 parts per million, but it's dropping, and there's another indication of what's coming next. We don't need the chart anymore. We just know that when we see the temperature dropping, see CO2 dropping, we know we are merging back into a glacial period. Full stop. You see that on your mainstream media? I don't think you do. That's my point. You can develop your own crystal ball where you can see the future if you've got the correct data. Guys, link down there if you want to help support us. Join us on Patreon. I will be leaving it now. I know I left it this month. I will update you guys on the position of the magnetic North Pole on the 4th of November. And, till then, guys, you take care of your loved ones. Practice what I've showed you here. And think about, what I showed you at the beginning of the video. Very interesting. Never seen a chart like it before. But there it is. Never passes the top line. Never surpasses the bottom line. And anything in between, I just wouldn't even bother with. But there you go. It happens every year. Sometimes twice a year. There's an opportunity. Okay. As always, bye for now.